Is this normal? Well, it depends upon how you look at it. We went through this whole winter thing, and winter can be, well, let's face it, a bummer. And let's also face it, it can do some damage. And on a plant like this, we're going to learn if this is normal or something we need to be a little bit more concerned about. This is a sequoia. The cultivar name is glauca, although that means blue. And right now it's looking a little more, not blue. The issue with this plant is that it is listed as about a zone 6 plant, and that can sometimes even be pushing it. And it was installed in the late fall here in the southeast, more specifically Tennessee. And we had more like a zone 5A, 5B kind of winter, which is translated into colder than normal. And this plant took some pretty severe winter damage. Now, is this a plant that's really going to recover? Well, yes and no. The plant is showing signs of new growth for the upcoming year, but it's also showing signs that some of its older growth has been burnt to a crisp and will be dropped as quickly as humanly possible by the plant so it doesn't have to waste energy on it. So the plant will live and then will look a little bad for a while. So if you're going to have a plant that you want to sort of push the limits of zones, well, you may want to put it in a place that's not that visible to visitors at the very least, and you can sort of create a plant experiment lab somewhere in your garden or in your landscape. But now let's go take a look at a plant that may look a little shabby right now, but just give it a couple of weeks. Now this is Thuja occidentalis, which sort of sounds like a toothpaste to me for some reason. Also known as an arborvitae, or sometimes commonly referred to as an arb, and this is the cultivar Sherwood Frost. Now here's what's interesting about Sherwood Frost. Not only is it incredibly different than most of the big upright arbs that you might have seen in the past, but this is also a beautiful variegated form and also a dwarf form, meaning it shows both this great yellow cream color and also won't get that big. So here's one thing that's interesting about arbs though. They have what's referred to by some as bronzing in winter, which means they'll sort of discolor a little bit. Go from a white more to like a yellowish kind of color. And in the case of the upright greens, which we'll see in a second, go from being a really bright green to sort of a, oh, I don't know, bronze color. And now let's go take a look at a closely related arb to Sherwood here, but a little bigger and a little greener. So these are also a Thuja occidentalis, not to be confused with a toothpaste, and these are called usually emerald arbs, but the cultivar name is actually smerigard, which is a whole thing that no one actually calls it by, which is a little confusing sometimes, but I digress. This is a plant that is typically seen as a screen or windbreak plant, similar to how it's being used here, but here's one thing that I've got to mention. You will notice a lot of variance between different forms of this plant depending upon the pruning technique. Our production crews spend a lot of time to get this very tight and dense upright form of the plant, which takes a little bit of extra time, but we feel is well worth it to get this kind of finished product for our customers. Now here's something interesting about them right now. We've had some warm weather here, so they have started to green up, and you only see little signs of some bronzing here or there throughout the course of the plant. So how can you tell if the plant is going to come out for spring? Well, it pretty much gets down to this. Do you see new growth starting to develop when you get into that warmer time of spring in your region of the country? If you see that, you're in good shape, especially even if you see it with a slight bronze color and then that slow turning over to green in combination with that new growth activity. So, to recap, make sure that your plant is putting on some signs of new growth. If it is, the plant's healthy, it will eventually start to push for spring. If you have areas that once that starts to happen, you don't see any kind of color change in, meaning it's going to green or to blue or whatever color that plant might be, you might have some winter damage that you may have to part with, and if you don't, the plant will, so a little bit of pruning might be recommended. If you're going to zone push some plants, put them in a part of the landscape or garden, well, that not many other people can see them, because you might end up with a plant that's not going to look that hot after a particularly brutal winter in your region of the country. So remember, winter can be rough on plants, and it'll also be gone at some point, hopefully sooner rather than later. And we'll see you next time in the garden.